Welcome to How to Become a Test and Learn Ninja, part of FireCap First Fridays. I'm Tom Vaughn. Here's a little bit about my background. I've spent time at each of these brands, about 10 years at USAA, 7 at Amazon, a couple years at Microsoft. Now I'm happy to be back working with my good friend Susan Price at FireCat Studio. I've done a variety of UX and marketing roles primarily. Worked on Amazon Prime, worked on Alexa, worked in both marketing and communications and UX at USAA. So I have a very strong background in test and learn, the topic that we're here to talk about today. It's been something that I have been passionate about for more than a decade, and really honed a lot of those skills at Amazon. They are amazing at it. So I always like to start with this quote from the 1800s, attributed to a department store owner who the department store eventually became Macy's down the road. But half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. This is still so true today. This quote has just stood the test of time because, as much as we have evolved and grown in our ability to track and look at the effectiveness of it, it is still to this day a struggle. And this was way back before the turn of the century. So it's amazing that it still holds true. So I just always like to start with that one. Hopefully we're going to learn some things today to help us get better at it. Why test and learn? Real data. There's a dozen reasons why I could talk about why we should be doing this, but real data is number one. Real world results speak volumes. It's the best way to end a debate. It's the best way to prioritize. It's the best way to drive improvement. Number two, this idea of continuous improvement. So the people who are really embracing test and learn are not doing one-off tests. They're embracing it as a part of their entire working rhythm. This idea of ongoing experiments to drive continuous incremental improvement every week, across marketing, across product management, across customer service, across any area that you can think of in your organization, it could apply. And then lastly, this idea of let's talk about outcomes, not opinions. And real world testing with real world customer data does just that. It gets you out of the world of having discussions and debates around opinions and emotions and the opinion of the highest paid person in the room, but it gets us to driving the decisions and the debates via measuring our outcomes. And that's what this test and learn approach is all about, is doing exactly that. So let's look at the case studies. This first one, this first quote from Bezos, I love it. It is so true. Our success is a function of how many experiments we do every year, every month, every week, every day. Amazon was founded on driving continuous improvement through data-driven experiments. It's something that has been part of the kind of just fabric of the company forever. And they're known as really just data kings, with all the segmentation that they do and personalized emails and offers. But it's really, my 7 years at Amazon were a master class in data and experimentation. So let's look at one example. When you go to the Amazon.com homepage, you'll see a series of boxes and rows. They're called modules. So this is a modular approach that essentially means that every box, which I've highlighted some of them here in red, every box on the page and multiple pages throughout the entire site, but just today let's talk about the homepage. Every box can be tested independently from everything else on the page. So Amazon figured out pretty quickly that one set of metrics doesn't fit everything. The different groups are interested in different outcomes. The retail group cares about purchases and checkout. The video team cares about streams and signups for Prime Video. The Kindle team cares about downloads and readership. And all of those different metrics are, they're very, very different in terms of the outcomes. So one, they figured out how to track all of those outcomes that matter for each business. And then they put in this modular approach, and modular UX isn't, a brand new thing. There's books about this idea of using a modular approach to your UX. But what's brilliant about the way Amazon does it is every group can run their own test. If the Kindle group has something that they want to test, they have the keys to the kingdom to run their own test on the box, on their box on their homepage, right? And then similarly on the Kindle homepage, right, or the video homepage. It works throughout the site and the apps. And this, when you see it at scale, it's amazing. It's hundreds of millions of customers, nearly 100 countries, and just thousands upon thousands of tests happening every day, every week of different content, different offers, what works with this segmentation group, and this idea of empowering each of the individual teams with the tools so that they can run their own tests, right? You get out of needing this huge corporate-wide testing group, and it really empowers everybody, each team, to run their own tests, track the metrics that they really care about, and optimize everything for meeting their specific goals. And it truly is mind-blowing. It's absolutely a ninja example. So how did they do it? They track everything that the customer does, every action, every click, every purchase, every stream. If you're going to get serious about data, you're quickly going to find that you really need to be tracking every single customer action that matters across all channels, across email, web, mobile, apps, whatever the channels are for your business. Number two, tracking downstream outcomes, right? The click or the purchase may not be the only thing that matters. It may be how much time someone's spending on a Kindle device. It may be how many streams people are watching on a Prime Video. This idea of downstream outcomes that really matter. They're those key performance indicators for your specific business. And then, lastly, this idea of a modular approach, giving the keys to testing to all the different business groups to manage their own, so that you don't have to wholesale change the homepage, right? You can change one box. Susan and I have been helping folks think about this idea of modular content on website design for a while, and it's amazing when you see it done really, really well. But all of this really comes down to a commitment to test and learn, taking that philosophy and that approach incredibly seriously. All right, let's look at the next one. While I was at USAA in 2009, my team launched the webinar channel. It was, at the time, USAA was looking to drive better acquisition of their investing products, and the company's research had shown that customers will do some initial research online for investing products, but ultimately many of them want to talk to a real person, to a trusted financial expert, to know that they're making the right investment decision. So with a webinar channel, you don't have an immediate call to action. Customers aren't going to watch a 30-minute investing webinar and then immediately go open a new account. It's not how those accounts work, right? They're going to think about it. They're going to kind of process what they heard, and hopefully they're going to come back and either call us or open an account online, because that USAA is offering this trusted advice, and showing kind of what our investing experts are thinking about during the markets. So we don't have kind of that immediate call to action that we can measure and test. So, but we still needed to understand how effective this new channel was compared to all the other marketing tactics that we're running: email, print mail, online advertising, events, you name it. Because we need to understand what the ROI of this channel is, so that we can understand how big of a priority to make it. It's an expensive and it takes a lot of time. It's a work-intensive channel to put on a live video webinar. And so we really wanted to figure out how we can measure the effectiveness of it. So what we did was we captured the customer IDs for every customer who watched both the live webinar and the replays. And we put those customers into a special kind of test group called a do not send group. So that they would not be sent email or mail or shown online advertising about investing products for 30 days after watching the content. And we measured, we looked up in 30 days, and we looked at our test group versus similar control group, right? So a control group was also was similar demographics, right, and was also not shown the content, but they were not shown the same ads, right? But they were also had not seen the webinar. And the results were astounding. The customers who viewed the webinar were twice as likely as the control group to sign up for a new investing account in 30 days after watching the market commentary. And then for customers who already had an investing account, a lot of them were much more likely to increase their holdings with USAA investments, which is another key metric that the company cared about. So it proved the ROI was there, and it actually became one of the top performing digital channels for investing in high net worth clients at USAA while I was there. And without that test and learn, without that ability to do that, control A/B test group, we would have only had viewership. We would have only seen, well, this is how many people watched it. But that doesn't tell us how valuable it is to do these, right? It's just not that useful of a metric. But once we were able to run the test that we did and now have the real customer data to show this is having an impact, this is driving new accounts, this is driving more money into the investment group, it convinces leadership right away. They can see the value in this, and again, that's a lot of what test and learn is about, showing that real data to persuade the value of an idea or a use case, those kinds of things. So one more, sorry, how'd they do it? So to do it, they capture customer IDs who watch the content. They had the ability to place those customer IDs into a do not send group, and then again, just like Amazon, track the downstream customer outcomes that was not tied to an immediate call to action. So again, it comes down to a commitment to test and learn. So let's look at one more, and then we'll take some questions. I was consulting for a regional insurance carrier, and we wanted to help the client run a series of A/B tests on some internal tools and processes with their customer support group. So we had the UX team at the company had a new flow, a new process and set of screens for their customer support agents, and we wanted to test how effective it was. Would it improve average call time, which was the key metric. So we carved out a 10% sample group of employees who were going to use the new system, and then we compared their data with basically the 90% of the rest of the company that wasn't using the new system. That was our control group, and it turned out that the new experience saw an average call time reduction of 14% over the old version. And I mean, that's huge. It adds up to millions of dollars saved over the course of a full year. So we wanted to keep testing. We ran a couple more tests to see if we could do better, drive a little bit more improvement into the numbers. But while we were running the next round of tests, the IT department went ahead and started working right away on implementing the first thing that we had tested, because the results were so strong. And so, our later tests, we were able to eke out a percentage point here or there, but it really wasn't worth it. The meat of the value really came in that first round. So it was full speed ahead on implementing that company-wide. So this is incredibly valuable to be able to convince leadership. So there was a key leader in the customer support group who had been skeptical that this should be our number one priority, because it was a lot of work to build, and it was going to be a lot of time and work to retrain the entire customer support group on this new flow. And he just wasn't convinced that it was going to be worth it. Once he saw the results of the test, he completely turned around. He was 100% ready. How fast can we get this out there? That's the value that this idea of real world data brings to your prioritization, to the debates inside of a company. What is the right idea? Don't get out of opinion driving the decisions and get into, well, we ran a test. This is what the data showed, and the data shows this is really, really great. That's just truly the value that you can get from this test and learn approach once you get serious about it. So how they do it. Measure average call time. Everybody can do that in customer support groups. They had a dedicated group of employees for testing new functionality. That already existed before we got in there. So that was great to just be able to come in and say, great, you have this group that already does tests for you. Let's structure it so that we can test this idea of a new flow with a small group. And then, live customer data compared to a control group. That's how nearly all tests run. And again, it comes back to a commitment to test and learn, committing and to being serious about this approach and integrating it wherever possible. All right, so let's look at some of the testing fundamentals. Cannot emphasize enough this idea of start small. So many small bets are always going to be better than one big bet. And you don't have to have, massive experiments that require training or huge development effort. You just need to find something that's important to you, the business group, and start a small test, and you'll get better at this over time. But the companies that make one big bet versus the companies that make a dozen small ones are much more likely to fail, because when you're doing testing right, you're going to see a failure rate. Not everything is going to succeed, whether it be a product management test, a flow UX test, or a marketing test. So you have to prepare for failure. And if you have 10 tests going and you have 4 of them fail, then you can double down on the 6 that worked. But if you have one big test and it fails, then you spent all of your time, kind of all of your eggs on one basket that didn't work. All right, number 2, this idea of one variable at a time. So I've heard this quote a bunch, a variation of this quote. Well, we've ran a bunch of tests, but I don't know what moved the needle. This is this idea of a disciplined approach to testing, so that if you're running a subject line test, an A/B test on a modular content box, only run that A/B test and then see what works and move on. When you start, when you're just kind of, we threw a bunch of tests out there, that's where you'll always get noise. You'll always get stuff that's like, well, I don't know what it was, right? So this idea of slow down, get disciplined about testing one thing at a time. And then lastly, this idea of control groups, right? So control groups are groups of users that don't see whatever's being tested. They're important because you have to be able to show this. We showed the new thing, the A version to this test group, and this is how they performed on our key metrics. And then we didn't show it to this control group, the B version, and this is how they performed. Now let's bring them back to the data back together and say, okay, which one performed better at our key performance indicators? Okay. I do want to leave lots of time for questions, so we have a couple more left. How does this apply to your entire organization, right? So marketing is kind of the easy one that most people know. We do testing on emails and A/B testing on campaigns, but it's not the only thing that can be that can benefit from this idea of a commitment to test and learn. Product development, product management, Amazon, and frankly, every company I've ever worked at has done some form of testing on product development, right? So prioritize the roadmaps based on real customer data. It's testing are important, but it's also to get important to get prototypes out there into some kind of test group before you roll everything out, right? So usability is always critical to really identify the key challenges in the UX, but then this idea of getting it out into production as well on some limited basis. UX, just talked a lot about that. So finding the best performing designs, again, both in pre-production and in production. And then I love the customer service example where, let's test a new flow with a backend experiment and see what happens. So what should I be testing? Here's some common areas to test, and in my career, I've run basically every single one of these in some version. And it's amazing when you get serious about it, this commitment to your data and to testing, what insights you'll find about what drives action on your emails, what drives action on your ads, on your landing pages, on your CTA button, if it's blue or green. There's a ton of things to test. and you'll just be amazed at how much improvement you can see when you get serious about it. On the product management side, Amazon was detailed email flows where, when you're a new customer to Alexa, you get this email on day 1, and then this email on day 5, and then this email on day 20. And they were constantly tweaking those because they had very specific actions that they wanted to get out of it. Is 3 emails right? Is 4 emails right? Is 6 weeks right versus 3 months? Product usability we've talked about. There's a lot of folks on here who've done UX testing in their career, but also pricing. Amazon runs pricing offer tests all the time. I know I've talked to Darren; he does the same thing. Does this price work at driving better sales where I'm still profitable, right? What does this offer mean in terms of my bottom line? But also feature enhancements. This idea of putting out a new feature only to a test group. Let's put a link out to a new feature to a 10-15% test group and see how it performs and get their feedback. Get real usage data to go along with the usability data. Page layouts, bailouts, right? We could talk about this forever, but I do want to move on. So let me know if you have any questions. And then lastly, a disciplined approach, right? So what does that mean, and why does it matter? So Susan and I help companies do this. This is part of thinking and data-driven decision making. But we help and I've done this at a lot of companies, and we're helping companies now create this idea of a comprehensive, disciplined process where you go through each of these 10 steps and you document it, right? You have a bunch of ideas, you estimate the impacts for each one based on your KPIs, you prioritize the best ones, design the test. How are we going to do it, right? Is it back end? How big is the control group, et cetera? How long do we need to go to get significant data? Execute the test, measure, analyze the results, make a decision, and then roll out, right? Either it worked, that's the version that we're going forward with, or it didn't work, moving on to the next test. And then this last one is so critical to really help others around your organization understand what you're doing in testing, what you're seeing, the results that you're driving, but showing the rest of your company and your peers that you're committed to testing and learning, that you're committed to this process, and that these are the results that you're seeing. This puts you in a position to be a leader inside your org to do just that when folks are curious about it. It puts you in a position to be the hero for, I'm embracing this concept and here's what we're seeing out of it. And it's something that we often just don't make time for because we're just trying to move so fast. So the last thing I'll say is not just something that you can buy a tool and start testing. I mean, you can, but it really is about nurturing a culture, people, data, and processes, right? And you have to nurture all three of those to get to a culture where your larger organization really embraces and appreciates the value of test and learn. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining, and hope it was useful. We're here to help. So we offer these kind of workshops with folks. We do customer journey mapping, we do UX, we do data-driven stuff, experimentation plans. So let us know how we can help.